Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Lumineers Quest podcast, where we talk everything Lorcana. I'm Zach.
And I'm Jacob.
Thanks for coming on this journey with us. Okay, if you listened to last episode or last week's main episode where we did the meta tier list, we made the off cuff remark on doing an updated abilities ranking / talking through the abilities and the importance of each of them. And I think we were both like, that's a really good idea. We need to do that earlier than we initially had planned out. And so we kind of pushed some other stuff off to talk about this one. So we're going to talk about all the abilities and kind of, where they sit and some of the importance of each of them and how they, should be considered when building decks and things like that. And so, that's what we're going to be touching on today.
All right.
So let's go ahead and jump into it. As always, everyone, thank you so much for supporting. If you want to support the channel, the best way to do so is use our TCG Player affiliate link when you're buying your singles. It's TCG Players. I guess it's kind of sponsored because we do get support from this. But I bought a ton of singles this time, and it's a very great, easy way to go about doing it and get all the cards you need. So that's the best way to support the channel. And then if you want to follow us in other places, you can do so on our X/Twitter account at LorcanaPod, or you can email the show any questions or comments you have at LorcanaPod at gmail.com. Okay, so we covered, like I said last time, there was actually 3 or 4 comments I got about the Mufasa one, and so I kind of just wrapped all those into the Mufasa segment we did. And so I don't have anything new this time, but we can go back to doing the pick a movie and pick some fun card / item / location from said movie. Let's go ahead and do that one. We can even do one that's already been released. I'm not saying pick the Lion King, but I actually was thinking, let's do the Lion King, and there's a reason behind that. Okay. So I'm going off script a little bit here. Okay. But there's
I don't know how I feel about this, but okay.
What don't you feel about it?
I don't know where you're going with this.
Where I'm going with this is, think about the cards we have from Lion King. There's a ton of Simbas. There's a ton of Mufasas. There's a decent amount of Rafikis, I suppose. There's
Scars. There's so many Scars.
There's a couple Scars. There's a couple Zazus.
Got a lot of hyenas.
Is there
Nalas?
There's but no, that was actually going to be one of the ones that I disagree on. There's only 2 young Nalas. Okay. There's no old Nalas. Is there any, or how many Pumbas and Timons are there? And are any of them any good?
No.
Are there any Sarabis?
I'm going to be honest. I don't know who that is.
All right.
Is that his mom?
All right, everyone, thank you for listening. And Jake is retiring from
Simba's
podcasting.
Mom?
Yes.
Okay.
And so, Sarabi was going to be the one that I said. Okay. How do you not have a Sarabi card?
Because she isn't that important.
Just Can't Wait to Be King? That's another one that I can throw out there. I was actually
that is a song, is it not?
Just Can't Wait to Be King?
Yeah, we have a song of that.
What? No, we don't. I will bet you right now on the spot.
Oh my gosh, we don't.
Yeah.
What?
So again, that's a property that's already out there, and it is very well represented. But I think Timon and Pumbaa are underrepresented as far as their popularity within the Disney sphere. But more importantly, the 2 that I had in mind for myself was Can't Wait to Be King and Sarabi.
Okay. All right. Those are good. I mean,
that's what I'm saying. Again, but I think that's not a complaint. That's more of a look into how great some of these characters are and how deep Disney's, character dugout and bench is, that some of these beloved, secondary or not main characters in these movies don't have any representation, while you have others Hiram, I guess, only has the 1 card, but it's super powerful, and so those are the first ones that come to mind. But I just think Just Can't Wait to Be King is definitely one that would be super fun to have, and then Sarabi are the 2 that I thought of.
Okay, now I'm gonna go more traditional. What we're waiting for.
Okay,
I have to shout this one out. This is gonna be, once this comes out, this is gonna be my baby. Nightmare Before Christmas.
Is that gonna happen though?
Why not?
I don't. I just don't feel like it's I guess it could be. It's just from a theming perspective, it feels very outside of the norm old Disney.
I think it could be so good.
I'm not saying it's not. I'm not saying it shouldn't happen. I'm just saying it feels like it's
A little darker.
a little stretch, kind of like, getting into the Pixar realm. Like maybe once you get into the Pixar and it starts, bringing in like stuff that's not like core Disney or like legacy Disney. I know, like I see your face, like I understand that, but I'm thinking like, think about, when you think about Disney's history, that's not one of the first ones that comes to mind. It's very much, the princess movies, Bambi, which I don't know, we probably should mention Bambi at Bambi at some point, Jungle Book. I would even throw in, Great Mouse Detective, The Rescuers, which is coming soon now. I mean, a lot of those, just like classic Disney movies. And I don't feel like that I have that same, and maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm the one that is, outside the norm here, but I just don't feel like that's like the traditional, what I think of when I think of Disney.
I mean, that's fair, but that's probably my favorite Disney movie. It's up there with Treasure Planet.
And that's fair. And again, I think that that's normal for a lot of people, just like in the sphere of...
The song cards would be absolutely incredible, dude.
I mean, Oogie Boogie would be great too.
Oogie Boogie, Sally, Jack, Mirror,
Oogie
Dr.
Boogie,
Finkelstein.
Oogie Boogie is more iconic
Lock, Shock,
than
and Barrel.
any of the... Oogie Boogie and Zero are my two favorite characters.
Zero. I mean, I would say Jack, just the look of him is most iconic from the film.
Well, iconic, sure. But like, as far as like my resonation, like I don't really care about Jack and Sally.
We get Santa Claus. We get legacy,
see, that's why I think it starts to like fall outside the realm of normal Disney. I know not all like legacy Disney properties are like Disney, like they used other stories to make those movies, but
most of them are like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Peter Pan.
But I think they're so iconic as Disney now that when people think of those, they don't think of the other thing. They think of Disney. Whereas if you think of Santa Claus, you're not thinking of Disney. You're thinking of the holiday.
Sure.
So that's, I think, again, it's just getting outside the realm. But
this is Halloween. What's this?
Again, that's very holiday based versus very Disney based. I'm right. I'm not, and again, I'm not trying to like talk out of.
I think it works though. I think it's fine. Like,
that you're just saying that because it's your favorite.
Do it a holiday release.
That, and if you want to do like a special Pokemon set where they do, the once or twice a year, where they do like the special edition sets, like yeah, sure, like go for it.
That's gonna be good, dude. Come
on. Okay. Moving on. I guess card of the week, right? So. Do you have we jumped into this one without even talking about it, so now I'm scrambling. But I have a out of left field. Well, no, we've already talked about that one too. Man, I'm really off the rails now.
Okay.
What about Mother Gothel? Let's just do Mother. No, okay. You're welcome. I take it back. You're welcome. We already talked about.
We've already talked about You're Welcome.
Gosh, we have. Okay.
Mother Gothel's
man. Fun. I'm like really off of left field then. We've talked about that one, but not very well. Man, this is like embarrassing at this point. Cusco. We haven't talked. I mean, we've talked about Cusco, but we haven't talked about Cusco.
I think we have though, but it's
not
fine.
As a card of the week.
Okay.
We've done like 4 episodes. There's no way that we've had Cusco's card of the week. So Cusco, Selfish Emperor. Shout out Why Breezy would be very excited with us picking this one. 3/5 stat line. Quests for 2. His primary ability is when you play this character, you may put a chosen item or location into its player's inkwell face down and exerted. And he has a secondary ability that says pay 4 ink. You don't have to exert. It's just one of those cool ones where you can pay 4 ink to do it. And it says your other characters gain resist +1 until the start of your next turn. So my initial thought on that one was like, that's a lot of ink to do nothing. But if you don't want to like commit more resources to a wide board because you might get be prepped or there might be some sort of, big board disruption coming, then don't use your ink to do that. Just use it as like a secondary ability and just have it out there to protect things when, there's not a lot of other opportunities to do things. And that's like the secondary ability. The primary ability, the biggest gap, I think, in the deck building that Sapphire Steel and Ruby Sapphire had last set was the ability to deal with locations in an effective way, like on curve. The Flynn Sisu Castle just like destroyed a lot of these decks most times. And now that you have an ability to just really like unconditionally remove those locations and not have to worry about the strength that location has is a really important tool for those 2 decks specifically.
You can use the second ability twice, right?
Yeah, you can use it 4 times if you wanted, because it's not exerting to do it. So if you have 12 ink and you don't want to make your board any wider, or you're playing like a song deck or a steel-based removal damage removal deck, then just pump your characters up 3 times with your 12 ink, quest everything, call it good.
Yeah, I mean, that's so cool, dude. I love it.
I know. Again, initially I thought it was kind of like, that's stupid. Like, you're never going to do that. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized like there are definitely turns where you don't want to commit more to a board that could be prepped, or you don't want to commit more to a board when there's the potential that comes back and bites you. Like, you don't have a bunch of hand resources. You don't have any card draw, so you can't like refresh the things that you're putting on the board. And so you want to hold back just a little bit. And so what better to do than to spend that ink on protecting your things?
This overall is a really good B-prep counter, because you take out that location or item, they B-prep, they don't have like that extra value of an item or a location staying on board.
Yeah.
Like, it's pretty good.
Exactly. And then it helps you in preparing for the B-prep to come, because you just buff things, force them into it if you want them to, and then go from there.
I like it.
It took me 6 minutes to find the card and to sit here and stumble over like maybe we should have, pun intended, prepared a little bit better for the card of the week this time. But I think that he's definitely a Sapphire staple now. In my lists, he's a 2 of, not necessarily 4 of, but again, the primary benefit is to take care of locations. And so if you're playing a deck that doesn't have locations, you don't want him clogging up all of the other potential. So yeah, I think he's fantastic though. So with that said, we can kind of jump in, or I guess we had news, but I'm passing on the news one. Is there any crazy stories that you want to talk about?
Not necessarily. I mean,
what if I said that you have to tell me a story before we jump into it?
Like an actual, like a real life story?
No, I meant like a Lorcana event / story. Like, okay, we'll just ask you this. We were talking 2 weeks ago, and I gave you a bunch of old sleeves to shield up proxies. Have you done that yet?
Yes.
You have?
Yep.
Okay. This is news. Why didn't you say this? What proxies did you print?
I lied. I didn't.
Oh my gosh. I knew that was the answer. And then I got super excited when you said you did. I really wish you had, because I want a hyper aggro deck, and I'm too lazy / don't have daisies to spare. I actually don't even have 4 daisies. I have 3 daisies in the deck I'm playing, because that's all I've got.
I'm 18 and I'm doing other life stuff right now at the moment. So I've got
Okay, so you're making me feel bad for giving you a hard time about not doing it.
No, I'm just like an actual excuse though.
Oh, okay. I thought you were just saying that to give me a hard time.
No, like I'm actually busy.
Like you actually have a life and I don't, and so all I do is sit around thinking about Lorcana.
You're accomplished. It's okay.
I don't know. I do spend a lot of time, a lot of brain power, like dedicated just to crafting, like deck building / line, new tech potential. So maybe I should.
You know what? We're getting into both of ours birthday month here in September, so we can relax a little bit.
No relaxing. Not when the DLC is right around the corner. Gotta be prepared, pun intended.
I'm gonna relax.
Be prepared. Oh, I turned off the sound. I said before this one started, I have been using the sound effects, and I was going to give myself the crickets for how bad my singing skills are.
On to the main topic?
Okay. And Jake is clearly done with my singing, because he's trying to push me out of this rambling fit here. But okay, yeah. So I think, as the game's evolved and how some of these characters have really come into their own, we were, discussing off podcast on like the disruption that some of these can bring. And I think this set has like really reinvigorated some of these and made even some of them even more important. And so we would just want to, again, like talk through the importance of some of the abilities out there and how you should be considering these abilities when playing the game, because a lot of them are very, very important. And having these abilities, like overstat the card, substantially. So we'll jump into it in the first example. And probably shouldn't start with the best, but we can do that just because it's the easiest way to jump into it. I was
going to do worst to best. No?
Okay, well, let's just do worst to best then. Yeah, okay. We'll back it up. So the abilities, again, as a quick reminder, like the actual like card stated abilities that cards can have are Bodyguard, Challenger, Evasive, Reckless, Resist, Rush, Shift, Singer, Support, and Ward. So we haven't gotten a new one of these actually since Resist in set 2. I wonder if there's like anything else out there cooking that they'll release eventually.
I mean, we've got the weird shift where it's
I guess
this card
yeah.
and then the sing together. Like,
those are variations though.
Yeah.
So I guess still in the same realm of the initial kind of thought of it. But yeah, those are all of them out there. So what would you say we're going from worst to best? So where are you throwing on worst? Singer like we did last time?
Let's put Reckless at the bottom. How about that?
You've always been a Reckless hater. So if you've been with us for a long time and you're still listening, when we did this first and we like ranked the importance of the abilities, we put Singer last. And boy, have our understanding of the game changed because Singer being last is.
To be fair, at that time there was like 2 cards that had Singer.
But it didn't even and to be fair, that's why we said it. We said we understand the potential of it, but only having like 3 singers, that really puts a damper on it. But now that we understand it more, that singer that we had in chapter 1 is still to this day the best singer. Well, I don't know. Naveen actually might take that crown now as the best singer.
I think it's still best singer.
I don't know. I think Ariel being inkable and being able to search for the songs that you're trying to sing to is still honestly, I think.
We can't talk about singing yet. We'll get there.
Okay, you're right. I'm getting off topic. Okay, you're saying Reckless is the worst?
Reckless or support, dude.
I'm saying support's the worst.
All right. We'll do support now.
We'll just talk. Yeah, we can talk about both of them because I think we can both agree that those are in a tier. Yeah. We'll just put them F tier together, even though they're probably not F tier because they still have importance. But support is, anytime you quest, you can give your strength to another character, to then buff their stat line to help them take out a bigger character or deal with a more important threat, and kind of go from there. And so. I think this is probably towards the bottom of the list just because there aren't any real impactful support characters.
Not at all.
There is a new one, Chicha.
Okay.
I will tell you, the first time I played a Blurple deck that had Chicha in it, I got incredibly embarrassed because Chicha kept there was like other threats on the board, and I was like, well, I got to deal with that. And then Chicha would quest and buff something else and then take it out. And I'm like, okay, well, clearly I got to take the Chicha out, even though this other thing is a bigger threat. Like her being on the board, being able to draw cards and give that support is really bad. But in general, there's not like a really strong pool of characters with support that are impactful enough to play. And so I think from that regard, again, when you think about like the importance of the ability, it's how much impact those characters that have that ability or give, and most of them, if not all of them, aside from Chicho, just aren't really there. So
yeah.
Support's at the bottom. You've always been a Reckless hater, so we can talk about Reckless next.
If you look at Reckless in a vacuum, it is by far the worst ability.
But we're not looking at it in a vacuum. We're looking at it in the respect of the impact it has on the overall game.
Name 3 good Reckless cards.
Gaston, Maui. And
which Gaston, bro?
The chapter 1 Gaston.
That's not. No one plays that. Come on.
Yeah, they actually do, and they played it a bunch at the end of last set to deal with Flynn and Flynn Sisu because without that strength. So the importance of Reckless isn't necessary, or is definitely not its ability from the sense of like what it does, in the writing. So Reckless obviously means that it can't challenge, and so that. Specifically, obviously,
it
takes away from the card, or can't quest. Yes, that obviously takes away from the card. But what it does is it buffs the stats of the stat line of the card. So like Gaston is a 2 cost 4 strength. I don't know if another one of those exists. That's 2 cost 4 strength. And so it's
Argus, right?
Oh, you're right, Argus, but he's a 1.
Yeah,
so he's a so Gaston, Maui, and the third one I'll give you out there is Hercules, the 7/3. So the thought on Reckless is that you have, again, I think it's been a really long time since I've said this like analogy too, but like everybody has a purpose, right? And when we started playing this game, you and I specifically, we kind of just throw like all around decent cards into there, and nobody had like a true purpose in the deck. And now that we understand deck building, like every card has a specific purpose, and Reckless character's specific purpose is to like hold up the boards. If you have a 4 cost or a 4 strength character on turn 2, that's going to really hold up your opponent from doing the things they want to do, whether that be questing, singing, challenging, other things like that, because they're going to be very vulnerable to being banished by Gaston, because most things playing that early on don't have more than 4 strength. And so that's where I think the value comes in, is that you have a person in your deck that is very much a challenger and a board presence, like kind of, staller. And so from that regard, yes, it doesn't help you get to the finish line from a lore perspective, but it very much stalls your opponent. And so from that regard, I think you're right. There's not a ton of impactful reckless cards, but the ones that are massive staples. Okay. Like Maui's up there with Tinkerbell as one of the biggest, longest running staples and
overall best cards in the game.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's move on to Challenger. That's where I'm going.
Yeah, I agree. So Challenger's the one where anytime you're actively challenging something, it buffs your given card strength. So I think the one that's still most relevant is probably Captain Hook, and then probably Crab, who gives somebody else Challenger.
The new Jafar as well, Challenger 7.
Challenger 7, new Jafar. Yep, that's a good one too. I think in a world where you're trying to, again, stall a board, kind of like Reckless does. You don't want to challenge into somebody that has a big challenger, because a 1-cost Captain Hook can take out a much stronger, much more costly card, and give you a very big value trade. Yeah. So anytime you can take a big value trade, there's a lot of importance behind it. Again, I think the strongest thing to consider here is that there's just not a ton of impactful challengers. The biggest ones that I can think of are the new Archimedes, the new 5-cost 1/4 that has Challenger +3, which honestly isn't seeing a ton of play. And so while I'm saying it's one of the most impactful ones, it's it's still not very
to your point, I think it's
widespread, and he himself doesn't have Challenger. The most impactful ones that do have it themselves, I think, are Rafiki, the 1-cost Amethyst card, and Captain Hook, the 1-cost Steel card. And then going through the list of other challengers, you have Jafar and Facilier from Chapter 1, Prince Eric from Chapter 1, Simba from Chapter 1, and then said Rafiki, the Ursula Shift Target from last set, Jafar, Legendary from this set, Archimedes from this set. And so, there's just not a ton of cards. There's 21 cards overall that have Challenger, and of those, maybe 4 or really have the ability to be impactful in a game. And so it's not necessarily indicative of the ability, because the ability is relatively strong, being able to trade into more important targets. But again, that's overall impact that you're getting from the cards that have it is relatively low.
Yeah.
So it's a good one, and it's a good one to consider, because even, so I'm getting to kind of more of the 101 of Lorcana, but if you're a newer player out there that's getting into the game, you have to be very careful, again, because if you have your opponent that looks like they have a very understated card, like Captain Hook on the board is a 1/2, but when it's challenging, so if you're just questing away, not thinking about it, then it can take out a much more impactful card, because that extra 2 strength can do a lot more. And the other thing to consider of a negative of Challenger is you're kind of just sitting there waiting for your opponent to do something. But more importantly, all those strength-based removals that Ruby has released over the time frame, it doesn't take the Challenger strength into consideration, and so you're just dying because all of them are understated on strength. So that the Challenger gives them those buffs.
I mean, it's good. Don't get me wrong. It's just, it's not my favorite.
No, it's good, but it's, again, one of the lesser impacts on the game that you end up getting.
I know where I want to go. Where do you want to
go? You're leading this here, so give me the next one, and I'll see if I agree or not.
Bodyguard?
Yeah, that's actually
okay.
That was actually going to be my next one too.
So this is interesting, and I guess I didn't fully realize this, but it's only in Steel and Amber.
Yeah.
So that,
most of these only have 1 or 2 inks that they're a part of.
That speaks to its impact.
Yeah. I mean, again, I'm a little torn on this one being this low, but I think, especially because of the hyper aggro stuff now, the hyper aggro with bodyguards can be extremely disruptful. I also think there are a lot of cards on this list that are very impactful. So if we're going through the list, Simba was massively impactful in Chapter 1. It's definitely seeing a comeback with some of the hyper aggro stuff. Baloo from Chapter 3.
That's my favorite bodyguard.
That
I think.
You get to lore when it's banished is incredibly impactful, especially for in a hyper aggro match when you're just trying to chunk lore, any way you can. That's a big one.
Chimpo.
Chinpo is definitely one to think of, a 4/7 body. When you cross that 6 strength threshold of a Maui, and you have a bodyguard and it's inkable, like that's insane to have to deal with. The Donald Duck Musketeer Soldier, again, another hyper aggro / fun quick tool to get yourself some unexpected lore, because his other ability says when you play this character, chosen character gets +1 lore. So in an aggro world / kind of racing world, you play him, he protects your quester and gives that quester 1 more lore. So that's a very fun, impactful one as well. And then 2 more that I think are even worth mentioning is the Hercules Beloved Hero. That's a 6 cost, 6/5 stat line, who has resist +1. So he's basically, he does still die to a Maui, but the 6 strength is kind of key in my book, because if you're getting Kita under the seed, he lives through that. And so you've still got a Singer on board to try to like claw your way back.
He also trades Maui.
Yeah. And so he's dealing with, a lot of big bodies. And so anything that's running into him is definitely getting traded because of that 6 strength. But I think the biggest impact aside from the bodyguard in that stat line is the fact that he can't get Kita under the seed.
It's huge.
Shout out Devin, local player, local Sapphire Steel player that we brew a lot together. And he was a big fan of that one too. And I think DeCandio had that in his list at the Fort Worth Challenge. And then the last one is the Kristoff, the reindeer keeper. He's one of those 3/7 stat line, or the 9 cost that gets reduced for the amount of songs that you have in your discard. So he's a 3/7 body with 3 lore. And, he's potentially just like a 4 or 5 cost in a steel song deck. I think the uninkable fact of this makes it a little less playable, but he's one of those that I've definitely strongly considered.
Also, he doesn't Chernobog put all those cards back so you can.
In a world where you dump a couple of these, if you're late game and you've got 2 of them in your hand and you've got 6 songs or maybe even 7 songs potentially in the discard, just dump both those out, and it's all right, be prepared or lose. Because there's no way that you're getting through 14 willpower of damage in 1 turn, I would imagine. So, I think bodyguard is very impactful. I think it's very situational given the deck archetype you're playing, but it's very relevant in those deck archetypes. So
for sure.
Okay, so we've gone through support.
This is where it gets pretty tough.
Yeah, we've gone through support, we've gone through reckless, we've gone through challenger, and we've gone through bodyguard. There's a couple I have, but they start to get really good. Gosh, I would say resist next, unfortunately.
Dude, that's I think you're right, but that's crazy.
I know. So resist is the next one. So resist is obviously the ability that reduces the amount of damage that a character takes by a given amount, given the card is ability. So Cinderella Stout-Hearted, I think, is the most famous one with resist that we've talked about quite a bit, that has resist +2. And so it reduces the damage taken her by 2. And so, eliminating something that has 5 strength and the damage is reduced by 2 means you either have to do 7 damage in 1 swing, or you have to do a ton of 3s and 4s, because those 3s and 4s are reduced by 2 each time. And so you ended up with, 1 or 2.
Now, the crazy thing looking at this here is resist is only in steel as it's on the card itself, but maybe the best resist card is not in steel.
And again, that's the most impactful resist card, but Cogsworth giving everything else resist +1 is very impactful, because it's widespread resist. A single card having resist is annoying, especially when on a bodyguard like the Prince, which we didn't even mention on the bodyguard that we just talked about. But having a lot of willpower and making it more difficult to chip away at that willpower is really impactful. Again, Hercules, the bodyguard we just talked about, has resist +1. You've got some of the brooms that have resist. You've got Tiana with resist. Another Hercules, Cinderella Stout-Hearted we already talked about. So there's a good handful of cards that are definitely playable with resist. But again, to your point, I think the most impactful thing is Cogsworth, because a little bit of resist that's very widespread is incredibly disruptive to steel players. And, as we've mentioned probably 1,000 times at this point on the podcast, is that steel continues to be one of the staples of the game. And if you're able to take away the thing that it's trying to do, that's really disruptive.
I don't. There's a Mari card that's the Chernobog. I didn't realize it had resist +3. That's nuts.
Yeah. So it's the new Chernobog of this set, and it says for each opposing character banished in a challenge this turn, you may pay 2 less to play this character. If that was inkable, that very well could see play too.
Yeah, and a little higher stats. That's a little weak.
I'm fine with the 5/5 since it's got resist +3.
Yeah,
I mean, again,
right.
like
I guess right.
basically nothing can deal damage to it at that point. You pretty much have to like direct remove it and Ruby of somehow, because even with 6 strength, you're only dealing 3. 5 strength's enough to basically take anything else out.
Yeah.
That has that amount of strength. So, but yeah, it's uninkable. So, anyways, I think resisting again, like on the surface and the amount of impact that each of these cards has, I think individually isn't super great. It's really the Cogsworth, to your point, that really comes in and like adds the insane value to it, because the idea behind resist is to hurt the damage abilities and the damaging of challenges, and what's better than like widespread resist, which comes from Cogsworth.
Yeah.
So from that regard, I think Cogsworth unfortunately is the best resist character, which is why I put it as low as I did.
No, I think you're right. I think you're right on. Now I'm completely torn. I have no idea what.
Okay, so what we've got left is we've got evasive, we've got rush, we've got shift, we've got singer, and we've got ward.
Shift or singer?
I think it's rush or evasive. That's hilarious.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, but I think we're into like the realm of like all of these are incredibly impactful.
No, I think
to a game /meta /deck.
Russ is insane, dude. I can't put it that low.
I don't know. I mean, if we're comparing it to like evasive or singer, maybe shift then. Maybe shift.
Dude.
But one has to be picked. One has to be picked. Like we can't just like just put them all in a bucket together. This isn't a tier list. This is a ranking.
2 of the best cards in the entire game are Rush and Fox and Maui.
2 of the best characters. Yeah, but aside from those 2, again, like what's uber relevant?
All right. Let's do Rush. Let's do it. Let's get into it here.
I mean, I'm saying that, but there are some seriously relevant ones. Okay, so Rush is obviously the ability that allows you to challenge the turn you're played. So this ability has been relevant for sure since set 1. In set 1, you had Rafiki, you had Maui, and you had Zeus, which even saw a little bit of play, and I definitely played it in set 1. And then it really starts to explode after that with, Madame M. Fox, Peter Pan's Shadow, Scar, Peter Pan's Shadow Finder, Super Goof, which has never like been super relevant, but still sees a little bit of play here and there. And then, moving on to set 5, we've got the Elsa 5th Spirit new card. And so there's so many good characters. And again, these are all kind of, and I say kinda, siloed into Ruby and Amethyst, because there's the one Emerald Beast Legendary from chapter 1, is the one outlier of the color combos that have rush. So yeah, I mean, I think to your point, like the uber impact is obviously being able to catch people off guard and challenge the turn they're played, so that they maybe quest with something that they don't want to die, but they're not ready for a challenger to come in. Our chapter 1 selves, I think, were pretty terrified of this, because not knowing the meta, not knowing the cards very well, not being very well versed into the play types of this is very scary. But ever since Fox came out, it's like, if you're not ready for rush, like, you kind of deserve to get traded into at that point, because if you're playing Amethyst, you're definitely playing against the Fox. Scar was super relevant in the Inklands meta. Yeah. Peter Pan's Shadow and Shadow Finder have definitely had their places, mainly because they have rush and evasive, and so they're able to challenge into things like Diablo and Minnie Mouse and some of the other evasive characters. But in general, evasive, or no, excuse me, I just said evasive because of Shadow and Shadow Finder. Rush is one of those that allows you to like claw back from a bad board state quicker than most abilities, because you're able to play something and have immediate impact that turn. So it's basically an on-play ability.
It is.
It's basically, it is an on-play ability, because it allows you to do something that turn versus having to wait. So,
another card to shout out here is the new Cogs 1-drop in Amethyst that grants rush
to
on
anything.
play.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think if you go back to those that grant these abilities to other
those are really solid
aspects, they give
Also, if your name's Cogsworth and you grant abilities, you're good too. So,
Yeah,
just in general.
apparently that's an ability is being named Cogsworth and giving other things abilities, because that is a indication that it's a good card. But yeah, I think Rush is incredibly important for getting back board states. If you're in a bad place, on the board, evenness front, meaning your opponent has a much more impactful board, whether that be higher cost cards or more cards, or higher impact cards on the board. Those Rush characters allow you to get some of that board state back because they can come in and make an immediate impact.
Yep. All right.
So evasive.
Singer shift, I think.
No, it's definitely evasive or shift.
Look through evasive.
I know, evasive's insane, and I think evasive was like our top 2 when it came back, but I think there's so many tools to deal with evasives now. The difference back then was there wasn't a ton of direct and damage removal, that if you didn't have other evasive cards to deal with your evasive, then you were in a bad spot. But now, with so many steal damage songs, with so many ways to deal damage to other characters like Tinkerbell, like Kronk, like Simba, all in steel, that when they're banishing cards, they're dealing damage to other things, that holds up your entire board, not just your non-evasive cards, because with all of those other damage dealing abilities and characters, you're able to challenge into something else and deal damage to the evasive character. And so while I'm not saying it's not impactful, I'm saying there are a lot more ways around evasive now than there were when we initially did this in chapter 1.
All right. Well, let's put that there, Ben. Let's do evasive. Now, just to talk about the impact here, you've got Tinkerbell and Emerald.
Yeah, Genie on the Job. I didn't talk about that one in our meta tier list, but Artabax was playing that one, and so if Artabax is playing it in Emerald Amethyst, you take note.
Brave Little Tailor, Pongo, shout out as the original goat evasive.
That is correct.
Blue Fairy, Cheshire Cat, Peter Pan Shadow
Finder,
Flynn Rider, Ray. Remember you put this low.
Yeah.
Surfer,
Minnie Mouse Surfer, Jafar,
Striking Illusionist.
Yeah,
you did this.
Sir Hiss is very impactful these
Diablo,
days.
Pegasus, both Pegasus, Prince Philip,
Sisu, yeah, Elsa, Fifth Spirit. Again, just because the breadth of cards that have evasive doesn't mean it's not. Again, it's the problem of the amount of ways that you can deal with evasive.
Elsa.
I said Elsa.
Okay.
The impact that evasive used to have, like in the Minnie Mouse heydays, in the chapter 1 days with your Pongos and your Ruby Amethyst evasive decks, is that there wasn't a ton of ways to deal with it. Like back in the day, there was no Strength of a Raging Fire. There was no Zeus. There was no Let the Storm Rage On. And without those direct damage dealing abilities, you can just quest away for free. But now you have ways to deal with it and get around that ability. And so their strength is usually understated as well because of the ability. And so again, if we're talking strength-based removal from Ruby, your Madame Medusas, your Brawls, your Sisus, all of those things, those are all impacting as well. And so again, I'm not saying it's not an impactful thing, because if your deck is not shaped in a way that it can deal with evasive, then obviously your opponent's going to run with the game. My point is that every deck is shaped in a way to deal with the evasive.
That's fair. All right.
What's the most impactful evasive card? Diablo?
Probably.
I mean, it has to be, right?
Yeah.
I would say Diablo is just one of the most impactful cards in general. And so if you're going through evasive, like in a smaller set, did you say Flynn?
I said Flynn.
Oh, you did say Flynn. Okay. Yeah, there's just a bunch of them. Okay, we've got 3 left. We've got Shift, Singer, Ward.
I have to put Singer.
I have to put Shift.
Okay.
Here, we can talk about them both. And then we can switch. So I say Shift because what percentage of the time now when playing are cards shifted? Especially outside of Steel Song. Steel Song utilizes Shift relatively frequently with the Robin Hood and the Queen line. But outside of that, I don't know if I ever shift.
Diablo.
But I think that got a lot less important with Bucky gone. I think the impact of that shift came from Bucky, not of this shift itself.
I'm looking here. Kita.
I don't think that's shifted very often. I think that's more or less played on 5, and because if you're shifting her, you're losing a potential singer on the board, and so you're shifting with Kita and just singing with it, which you could already have something else sing. So,
Sisu?
Sisu's definitely shifted. Yep, that's a good one.
Clarabelle?
Clarabelle's definitely on the shift train. That's a good one.
I mean, I don't know, dude. Like, but again, you're saying except Steel Song, but in Steel Song, it's defining.
It's very relevant. But we came up with 4 scenarios then of all of the impactful Floodborn shiftable characters. We came up with Robin Hood, the Queen, Diablo, which even I am a little like hesitant on. And what was the other one that you said?
Sisu?
Sisu. So those 4. And even then, I'm like really on the edge about Diablo because I think most of that benefit came from Bucky. And so with that Bucky shift, benefit being gone, you're most likely not wanting to do that anymore, and you're wanting to build a wider board. And so, yeah, I think that the getting those stronger, bigger bodies out earlier is better. But I also think building a more impactful board presence with multiple and wider, multiple cards and wider boards is just as impactful. And so it really depends on the strategy. And so, having something that you're not always trying to do, like we've talked about, if it's not a 4 of card in the deck, then is it something that's really as impactful as something that you're going to do all the time? Because if it was as impactful as, it possibly could be, then you'd want to do it every single time. You'd always want to shift. And
Sure.
most of the time you don't anymore.
Okay. All right.
So that's my take. So give me your singer take here.
It's only in 1 ink. It's impactful as all get out, but it's only in 1 ink.
But see, that would be my argument for it being the most impactful, is because it's so impactful that if everything
That
could
goes
sing,
against everything you just said about shift.
No, I'm saying that you would want that it would be shift is everywhere, but it's not always utilized. I'm saying if singers were everywhere and it could be utilized everywhere, it would be utterly busted.
Okay.
Think about it. Think about if every single ink combination
Had us Ariel.
something that could sing for 5 when it costed 3.
So, I mean, we'll go off impactful cards here. Cinderella, Ariel, Ursula Vanessa, and we'll top it off here, Prince Naveen.
Yeah. And yeah, they are. I mean, I think there's the Gaston baritone bully that's been played on and off a little bit. There's the Singer 7 Ariel and the Singer 9 Cinderella. Both of those never have seen any play. But again, I don't think it's very tough because you're right. I think I am being a tiny bit contradictory, but I think that this one is so impactful that if it was widespread into other inks, that it would be utterly game changing. And so it has to be very defined into a very specific set of cards, because if it does go everywhere and everything can sing Grab Your Swords and everything can sing, I mean, I guess the other big ones, obviously, A Whole New World or Be Prepared or any of these other songs, then it like really changes the dynamic of each of those ink identities. And so, the Amber identity is being able to like ramp to bigger characters faster, ramp to bigger songs faster. Sure. And so I think it's more just of an identity of each of the ink types versus the impact of the ability.
I think that's fair. But I mean, those are the 2 runner-ups.
Yeah. I mean, and again, I guess the last point I'll make on this one is like staple, most impactful cards for like a long running time. Ariel, absolutely. Yeah. Has always been around, has always been one of the most impactful cards in the game, is across multiple deck types, is across multiple archetypes. Cinderella, again, is like an absolute staple in all of these song decks.
Absolutely.
And now, Naveen is very much up and coming, one of the best value cards that you can have, because you can potentially get 9 to 10 ink cost worth of value for 4 ink, because you can play Naveen and then play a Zeus or A Whole New World or Grab Your Swords for free, and that would usually cost 8 to 9 ink. And so being able to do that for half the price is incredible value.
I mean, I can't disagree with that, but the overall king of abilities,
which we both kind of alluded to / waited for, is Ward, right?
I mean, let's just go off impacted.
It's the most disruptive.
It is.
Like
it's insane.
The reason I think that we both left it here for the last one to discuss, and the reason that we really wanted to talk about this, is because just like we said with some of these other decks and these other abilities, like evasive, for instance, like you have to build a deck to be able to deal with evasive. You have to build a deck to be able to deal with ward. The problem is there's like 6 cards in the game that allow you to deal with ward.
Or get around it at least.
Yeah.
Like you can't really. It's
So you've got Cusco, which to my shock, honestly, doesn't see more play than it does. I think if Cusco was inkable, it still might be the most played card in the game. Like 3 cost inkable. If Cusco was inkable, he'd be a 5 cost inkable quests for 3. And the only way to take him out directly is to challenge then. And when you challenge Cusco, whatever character challenges him and banishes him is also banished. And so it's always an even trade. And so I think if he was inkable, he'd be like utterly played, in every single Emerald deck. But you got Cogsworth. You've got the Muses. Prince John, Aerial Treasure Collector, the new Robin Hood, Timely Contestant, the Chernabog for Emerald, where you pay 1 less for each damaged character that your opponent has.
the big one they removed actually is Bucky.
Which is like my whole argument for this whole side of it is Ward was so overpowered for that card that they literally had to remove Ward from the card.
That's the big discussion again, like for it being the best ability. For sure.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the point, is that Ward coupled with other abilities that the card has that are really impactful, like Prince John's. We'll talk about Prince John, for instance, so we can talk about some of these other ones. Prince John allows you to draw a card every time your opponent discards one. Normally, you just say, okay, I'm going to get rid of Prince John so my opponent can't do that. Well, guess what? When it has Ward, you can't just get rid of Prince John. And if they're a smart player and they're not questing with Prince John and putting him in harm's way, then the only real way to do that is be prepared to grab your swords.
Yeah. I mean, Sisu
is obviously another one. And then you have the roundabout way of being able to challenge a readied character, which comes from Cinderella Stouthearted when a song is sang, or the new Arthur card that says, when you play this character, you can give this character a challenger +2, resist +2, and the ability to challenge a readied character. That one's not seeing really any play, and so I mention it because it's a way to deal with him. But like the Muses and Cogsworth, for instance, I think the two most played Ward characters.
Sure.
The Muses literally keeps me up at night, and I'm not just saying that.
So Cogs is my version of that.
And Cogsworth is very impactful, just like the Muses, just like the Muses. The difference to me is that the Muses disrupts you and helps your opponent. Cogsworth obviously like gives your other characters resist and makes it harder for your opponent to deal with things, but it doesn't disrupt you as a player, right? Like it doesn't disrupt your side of the board. It doesn't disrupt your hand. It doesn't disrupt what you're trying to do.
Which was the problem with Bucky.
Yeah, you can still go and do the things that you're trying to do with Cogsworth on board. It obviously changes your game plan because it makes things harder to challenge, makes things harder to remove. But when the Muses is able to, sing a song, potentially, bounce one of your characters, potentially make you discard a card, potentially do something to your side of the board, and then on top of that, bounce another character of yours back to your hand that has 2 strength or less, it's like double dipping in its ability. And it's every time they do that. And so it's the one that keeps me up at night for sure. And do I think it's balanced? Yeah, probably. Like it's definitely not in the Bucky realm of like annoying. But it definitely does make me think like what's the best thing that I can do to continue to deal with Muses, because that's the one that is most difficult to deal with in my opinion.
I mean, the crazy thing about Ward cards, again, and this is different from like any other, cards that share abilities, is they basically all have the same like removal and nothing more, it's really be prepared or Sisu or grab, and there's really nothing else.
Most of the time it's be prepared in Sisu, because grab your swords, aside from Prince John, so like all these other playable ones.
I'll throw Under the Sea in there as well, I guess.
Yeah, Under the Sea, because most of them are under 2 strength. But yeah, so aside from Prince John, Cogsworth playable with 5 strength, grab your swords, like even double grab your swords isn't killing that, so that's a very, very annoying one. Then you can go down to the Muses, which has 4 strength, which again, like if you're going to spend an entire turn double grabbing your sword, you have to have 2 of them in your hand, which is, not very common.
Probably playing 3, yeah.
Aerial, same deal, 4 strength. So grab your swords doesn't really do much. And then I would even like throw in Cloud Kicker, the 2/5 from Sapphire, because I know some people have played him in some of like the more aggro-y decks to try to race with that 3 lore. But yeah, it's just, I mean, you basically have Sisu and Be Prepared then.
Yeah.
And I guess Lady Tremaine, like in a roundabout way, but again, there's like such a contested like list of things that have to go right for them to be able to, for you to be able to do that it really is like 2 cards.
It's wild. I mean, I think this is head and shoulders above every other ability in terms of how
the impact that it can have on a game.
Yeah.
I mean, I talked last time about me going back on Sapphire Steel, and like the whole, I guess, like strategy of my deck is to get Ariel out with more items than your opponent, so she quests for 5, put a Chimpo in front of her, and then just keep questing. Like just ramp quest. Like that's literally the strategy, because if they don't have Be Prepared, guess what? They're losing.
Yeah. Basically. And
I mean, you have to, the other option then, like to your point earlier, is Under the Sea plus Kita. But that's almost a bigger combo. And so, I think, just looking again, as when we kind of started this off, it's like, how much impact does this have on the game, and how much do you have to be in a position to deal with the ability when it comes down? This one, if you can't deal with, which we've already said you really can't in most cases, then you end up in a really bad spot.
And I think, just talking about Ravensburger here in general, Bucky probably scared them with putting Ward, on specific characters, I would assume.
Probably so.
So it's probably going to be a lot more, sparse for where we see it from now on. There was
6 cards with Ward that came out this set,
which I think is pretty on brand. It's just, we haven't. This was developed before the Bucky stuff started happening. So
yeah. I mean, but they could have like done some late game changes on some of those. But to your point, like they felt Ward was so strong, coupled with the rest of the abilities, that giving characters Ward is going to definitely be one of those, like, are we going to, maybe they come up with a way that like a character that can challenge Ward, like his ability is this character can target Ward characters or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like Sisu, banish 2 strength or less goes through Ward. Some
ability. Yeah. So I don't know, some ability that does enable to do that. And then I think, it becomes a little more balanced potentially, but then it's like, okay, what's more important? You playing this, this character that deals with Ward, or just playing a bunch of Ward stuff? And so anyways, it's just one of those that you have to be on your toes for, and know what type of deck your opponent's playing, and if they're playing Ward, what are you going to do to deal with it?
Especially like your version of Sapphire Steel. If they're playing 2 super impactful Ward characters, I'm scared.
There's only so many Be Prepareds in a deck, even if you are playing Be Prepared.
If you are, I mean, you at that point, if you don't, you just have to hope you're faster, which with Ariel are probably not.
Yeah. Well, that's again, I got a lot of testing to do, and I got a lot more line development and personal piloting development of the deck. But that's kind of the plan. So
it's a scary one. It's a scary one.
Any final thoughts? I think that kind of wraps this one up.
I think that covers it.
All right. Well, that was another good one. I feel like, hope that helped some people. And this is kind of a little bit more of a
open discussion,
throwback conversation. But I feel like, for some of the newer players out there that might not have thought through all these things too, that should hopefully be a lot of help to you all.
For sure.
So yeah, hope this helped. I mean, this was fun for me to think of, because again, like even talking through some of this helps me think of new things.
Yeah.
When I'm deck building and crafting as well. So it's fun for me to talk through it. And I don't know what in the world you're trying to do hitting your mic with your hat like that, but I guess it's a good thing. That's just really embarrassing.
We're back. My bad.
We're right at the end of the episode too. You couldn't wait to do that for 15 more seconds, huh?
Sorry, my headphones and hat were falling off, so
I don't know how that happens. But all right. We'll end it on there before Jake embarrasses himself anymore. So thanks everyone for listening. Thanks everyone supporting, and we will catch you next time.
Bye guys.